Jamba Jumden de Geshe Mada Jamba Yana. Zobe Sanje Riba Dan Shasun Demba Devarish. Jiden Jamba Jibun Deva Kano Jova Nana Men. Hada Menam Je Demba Sanje Jumden Dembejo. Shaja Toba Chazeno Chodo Jasojo. Jamba Jumden de Geshe Mada Jamba Yana. Zobe Sanje Riba Dan Shasun Demba Devarish. Jiden Jamba Jibun Deva Kano Jova Nana Hada Menam Je Demba Sanje Jumden Dembejo. Shaja Toba La Chazeno Chodo Jasojo. Kanze Ganyan Zowa Jadamze Sajen de la Ngane Jiden de la Choje Son Teze Keba Jon la Chaz. Namda Gunga Chodo Sozam Yeshi Jatu Serjen Mongo. Chaban Jiden Sumna Lame Ba Gombo Chonye Jama Chaz. Chenjon Demba Chimen Daveshe Sendon Jawa Jama Chaz. Dure Jenda Siva Suma Che Nyame Chenjen Jama Chaz. Gumbo Tuji Chedenba Tamje Kembe Demba Bo Sonama Yuden Jazu. Dishen Shama Cha Zemo Taben Desha Jewa Gevenge Chido Tenama Shojo Shenju Jama Cha Zemo Jene Jebe Lava Tala Rabdo Ne Shenge Tamba Yune Gindu Lanya Cha Zemo Dikwa Jinya Meja Gewa Penso Soba Rangi Semne Yozu Jene Sanje Temba Yakamara Rima Juma Seba Chubru the Melam Lodan Jenda Deshe Chonam Sonam Dia Tamje Seba Yokobantum de Genji Datu Gada Nada Shiva Labju Siva Zolendo and Revelation.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the one beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, all the world, supreme guide of beings to the ten, teacher of gods and humans, to you completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, subdue from the scepter of land. I prostrate in offerings and go forth. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the scepter of land. I prostrate in all offerings of glory. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, glorious conqueror, the subduer from the scepter of land. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When it was supreme among humans, you overwhelmed this earth. You paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise and I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, to you I prostrate. With the spring signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to lessons I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the low worlds, the one path, the sublime pure reality, that Dharma which testifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show path with liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community of virtues and bliss. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, or perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or oil, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. So you condition things as such. Through these merits, the sentient beings obtain the rank of all sin. So through the foe of false, and be delivered from the ocean of suffering, occasions, sickness, and
Sanje Shodan Soje Shodan Chanju Prado Dade Gyazu Dagin Jenso Jebe Sonam Jayan Drola Penche Sanje Rupert Sanje Shodan Soje Shodan Chanju Prado Dade Gyazu Dagin Jenso Jebe Sonam Jayan Drola Penche Sanje Rupert Sanje Shodan Soje Shodan Chanju Prado Dade Gyazu Dagin Jenso Jebe Sonam Jayan Drola Penche Sanje Rupert.
I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Lama Tsongkapha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and other perfect actions, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha, the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Lama Tsongkapha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and other perfect actions, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha, for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Lama Tsongkapha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha, for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Gede Pumba Dayana, Gedan Shiva Chandrakirti, Gede Pumba Dayana, Pumba Zinye, Danya Yava Mayana, Dagi Yava Kana, Dadan Dagi Shiva Chandrakirti, Manzingan Zemeka, Ten Yava Mayanda, Manzingan Zemeka, Kagaton, Nanda Shiranidana, Dadan Dagi Yamzana, Yawan Neva, the Zip and the Kawase, Led on your Mosebata, led on your Monamdole, Teta Tomani Yaka, Dawish. Damage Sanjanam Dame Jebashalam one day, Sanjiju and Dobeso, Majeba, Chunin, soon. Tamje Yanda 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 Yini Yanda maybe Yanda Sanje. Sheneshimeshivana, Jovanam Jema Jeba, Namdo, Tademe, Tenet, Kana de Kanjuma, Tenerishet, Yeme, Teleshema, Jishima. Sanje Jedem Banam Jea, Deman Zinjo, Tunjimania, Tadem, Chevamania, Taman. Zosanje Namajuje, Yendonam Seven, Razanje Jin, Tembam. Dadan Chua, Basha, Rabbi, Joye, Kangia to Zinjas, Tawa Tanje, Tabation, Kodam de la Chats. Yeah, fourth ground, the radiant. So maybe review a little bit. So Chandrakirti in this text, the first begin with praising to the Buddha, homage to the Buddha. How's that? Homage, right? Homage. So instead of paying homage to the Buddha, Bodhisattvas, and the Arya beings, he prays or homage first to the compassion. So then the reason is Buddha's born from bodhicitta, enlightened mind. Bodhicitta is born from compassion. Right? So, and the compassion, again, that here the compassion is the way to generating compassion through contemplating on the six cause and the one effect. Right? So, out of ignorance, kind of karma, and the karma remain as a seed or the habit or imprints within the consciousness. The third, the consciousness that carries all the imprints to the next life. In the first, I begin with name and form, and then the faculties, and then the contact, and then the feeling, and craving, grasping, and then the process of becoming and born again and aging in the death. So the contemplating of the 12 links in dependent origination generates the great compassion. That compassion associated with realization of emptiness, right? And then through compassion and the wisdom realization of emptiness, it generates the bodhisattva or enlightened mind and aspiration to attaining the enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, right? So compassion, wisdom, and then aspirations, right? So that is the real three principal cause for Bodhisattvas to go on the path and attain the noble beings, and then again continuously meditating within the path of the noble being, and then finally attain the Buddhahood. This is why the Chandrakirti from the beginning traces to the compassion instead of Buddha and Bodhisattva. Right. So then this is the ordinary path means before the Aya beings, before you attain the noble path. So you practice compassion and the wisdom, and then generating bodhicitta. And then after that, ordinary path, and then noble beings. So noble path, starting from the first ground, second ground, and third ground. So until the 10th, right? So first ground, what they're perfecting among the 6 perfections, the first ground has perfected generosity, right? So text also mentioned that there is the perfection of the generosity through counting. I think generosity, the opposite of the generosity is the miserliness. So, which means fixation on the positions, fixation on any kind of entity. So that only can remove through the generating wisdom realizing emptiness by having directly preceding the emptiness. You are able to remove the seed of the miserliness or the root of the miserliness. So that's why first ground called Rabdugawa means what is the name of the first ground? Great joy, and then morality, and then the patience, and then within the patient, the best of the patient is the forbearance of realization of the dependent origination. So that is the main or patient. So with that, understanding dependent originations opens the patient, the practice of the patient for the, disregarding suffering, accepting the suffering. So especially for the laity, the practice that Buddha has suggested or recommended is the moral generosity, morality, and the patience. Three kind of patient, right? Patient with disregarding the suffering, patient with accepting the suffering, right? And patient with knowledge, the understanding, the deeper understanding of the dependent originations. So
So you can see the flip side of that is impatient of knowing the reality, right? Or misunderstanding of knowing the reality is the cause of the impatience. And then not having a sense of kind of respect, a sense of care for other is also impatient to take up the suffering of others. And not knowing the impermanence and the condition of suffering, the cyclic existence, is impatient to impatient with the small suffering, like mosquito bites, right? And then the weather, the sun, right? Cold, heat, and then so these are the kind of condition for the impatient, who the person who has not much knowledge of understanding the cyclic existence. So they think they are independent, solid, and they're pure, right? So that's kind of, review of the chapter ground 1, 2, 3. So generosity, morality, patience, and now perfection of the joyous effort. So the fourth ground. So here is saying that from the fourth ground and start the gaining the perfection of the wisdom from the fourth ground. Yes, now the fourth ground, the radiant. The fourth ground, the radiant, this has three parts, showing that diligence is superior on this ground. And then number 2, the etymology of the name of the ground. And number 3, the showing what is the particularly relinquished. Showing that diligence is superior in this ground. On this ground, more than the first 3 perfections. It is the diligence. It is the diligence that comes to be superior. As the text says, all higher qualities follow after diligence. It is the cause of the merit and the wisdom, the 2 collections. Where diligence comes to be set ablaze, the ground is the fourth, the radiant. So here the diligence interpreted as the kind of excitement or a kind of interest, having interest in the virtues activities, virtues taught. So these are the in diligence means that, right? It's not a kind of exciting about saying bad things and killings, right? So in Tibetan, what is the diligence? Something that you enjoy in practicing, thinking, contemplating virtues, virtues activities. So that is the diligence here. So no higher qualities comes about for someone who does not take joy in the virtue. Because there is no engagement at all in the generosity and so on. In contrast, for those who derive joy from the having gathered or gathering the qualities like generosity and mentioned above. the qualities that he has already attained will be enhanced, and those not attained will be achieved. So therefore, all higher qualities without exceptions follow after diligence. And it is the cause of true collection of the merit and wisdom, or gnosis. So here I mentioned many times the collection of the merit and the collection of the wisdom. So collection of the merit means out of compassions, any conventional virtuous activities are known as a collection of the merit, out of compassion, right? So not all the good deeds counts as a collection of merit. So out of compassion, driven by the compassions, and any kind of deeds, physical and the verbal and mentally. So these are the merit. So collection of merit, it is also the cause of the Buddha's form body, Buddha's appearance, Buddha's physicals, right? And then all the marks in the body. So collection of the wisdom, collection of the wisdom is the substantial cause for the Buddha's mind, right? So normal merit and the collection of the merit. I think here the making distinctions between collection of merit and merit. Right? The merit means any kind of positivities. So this can be kind of virtuous activities. So by cultivating the virtuous activity, making yourself powerful, look good, trusted, right? And also it can be turned into kind of start generating arrogance, looking down on others. Once you become powerful, right? Become powerful is through the positivities. So then you become when you achieve that the qualities, then you can turn into something negative. Now here the collection of merit means out of compassions. Anything that is out of compassion, the physical and the verbal activities, this will never kind of turn into the condition to causing you to be more negative things, engaging in negative activities. So this is why merit and the collection of the merit, the difference, between these two. And the collection of the wisdoms is always the kind of, antidote for the misconceptions and ignorance. So, the ground where such diligence comes to be especially set ablaze, the ground is the fourth, the radiant. Since on the third ground, the Bodhisattva has attained higher training and concentration far more excellent than that of the first two ground. From this, he has achieved the unique appliances that permanently dispel the laziness. So Shinrujangwa, I think Xinjiang means appliances. So there's a two kind of physical appliances and the mental appliances. So here is referring to the mental appliances, which is the result of generating the wisdom through analytical meditations. Through single-pointed meditations, and one can kind of long single-pointed meditations can develop some kind of physical kind of appliances, physical. I think Shinra means it's makes you feel light, makes you feel you feel like every breath, every water inside the body is kind of cooperating your positivist thinking, right? Whole bodies. So that brings that's called the physical appliances. Sometimes you mentally you think try to be more nice and positive thinking, but your body is not really cooperating because the body follows the habit, what you have trained. Right? So if like 2 hours you try to be thinking about the impermanence, the emptiness, the compassion, and the rest hours you go with anger, attachment, right? So bodies are trained with the negative emotions. So it's not really cooperating and feeling very tired, back pain, something like it's too long sometimes, right? So the mentally, how much you try, the body is not cooperating. Once the body starts cooperating, and that called physical appliances, shinjapa. Right?
So is saying in this ground, appliances developed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now here the appliances is referring to the mental state. Body is already there from the beginning. So mental appliances is usually and generally it explains that the understanding the dependent originations has the produces the result, three kind of result: no fear, no fixations, and diligence. Right? Because dependent originations, understanding of dependent origination, and empty of independent, knowing there is no independent phenomena, it helps you it is helping to free from the fear, no fear, and understanding the dependent originations, and that will that helps you to not fixate on anything, and then the through the dependent originations, understanding everything is possible. So that gives you the courage or confidence to do something continuously. Right? So that's why here the fourth ground has a gained high quality in the wisdom understanding of dependent originations. So that's why there is mental appliances, unique appliances that permanently dispel the laziness, right? Because this fourth ground sees everything is possible, and that not just believe, through the gain conviction, right? So that dispels the laziness. So lazy also, which means it implying that constantly doubt or constantly suspicion, right? It also causes the laziness, right? Because you don't want to go, right? So one side of mind says, I have to go, I have to do this. But one side of mind says, I'm not sure. I'm not ready. So this is still is kind of the indication of the laziness. So on this ground, the perfection of the diligence comes to be superior. The fourth ground. The etymology of the name of the ground here the Sugata's children comes to have, and now the text it says, a root text. Here the Sugata's children comes to have through their special practice of the factors of enlightenment, the light of gnosis far brighter than the glow of shining copper. And some masters explain this line with saying that the fourth ground Bodhisattvas, when he just come up from the meditative equipoise, and there is the appearance of the kind of gold colors, light. So, and also Lama Tsongkapha's biography, they mentioned about the before he he reveals the emptiness. The day before he reveals emptiness, and the space, you see the kind of Pajaparamitas line in the space, like gold color. So in the night, and then in the dream, Bodhipalita came and blessed Lama Tsongkapha. In the morning, he opened the book and again contemplated. Then he, how's that? He I think it reveals the kind of most profound and dependent originations, right? So I think maybe there's something we can relate it to. So what this mean of the glow of the shining copper means. Sometimes this happens, dehydrations. So you can see some new colors. So there's something in the mind that really changed the element. Right? So why is this ground called the radiant? One might ask, here on this fourth ground, the Sugata's children come to have, through their special practice of the 37 factors of enlightenment. So Changzhou Sudun, 37 factors of enlightenment, to a level far superior compared to the before, a light of gnosis similar to, but far brighter than the glow of shining copper, mentioned in the context of the third ground, because this light of the fire or perfect gnosis comes to be far superior on this ground, the Bodhisattva's ground called radiant. These very features are stated below in the Precious Garland, features cited also entering in the middle way. So Nagarjuna says, the fourth is called radiant, for the light of the perfect gnosis has emerged. So kind of, here, so I think, but we can just, seems like this fourth ground happened to be making a distinctions, like impermanence, and general understanding impermanence, and the more settled the impermanence, and generally the conditional suffering, and more settled in the conditional suffering, right? And then because for example, here when we analyze on the impermanence, like a minute, so you see the minute lasts for 60 seconds. So and then you conceive there's some kind of there's some kind of entity that consists of the 60 second remaining for 60 seconds, which interpreted in your mind that minutes is kind of exist in and of itself, begin with the first second throughout the 60 seconds. So that is generally people where they kind of way they think about a minute. So here, when we analyze more deeper, there is no such entity as a minute that exists in and of itself with seconds, right? So hypothetically, if that is the case, so the minute has to be exist with each seconds. So that minute is never die, never disintegrate until the 60th second. So why the minute has to disintegrate with the 60th second, not with first second and the second second? So this kind of settled impermanence means now, yes, conventionally, dependently, right? Dependently, you can impose the entity of the minute that exists for 60 seconds. But when we objectively kind of, try to kind of pinpoint, there is never exists as an entity of the minute with seconds, before the seconds, after the 60 seconds. So you see this minute is conceptually measured. A minute exists only kind of, through the projection of the mind, which is measuring the second. So it's like impermanence in the conventional knowledge, impermanence in ultimately. Right? There is no ultimately impermanent things. There is no ultimately suffering. Right? Yes, conventionally, yes, relatively, yes, dependently, as something to be known as the suffering, but ultimately there is no suffering at all. So this is how this fourth ground is gaining, unique knowledge of understanding the 37 factors of enlightenment. So 37 factors of enlightenment. So Nagarjuna first says, the fourth is called radiant. For the light of the perfect gnosis has emerged, for he has cultivated this, especially all the factors of enlightenment. As a fruitional effect of this, he will be king of conflict-free. So commented as a Yama or God. He will be skilled in utterly destroying the identity view and its, derivatives. Is that right? So, which means conflict-free means this is kind of, like in desiram and form ram, formless rams. The formless rams has, I think, 16th level. So above the Hindu and the Buddhist, they believe the Mount mirror, right? And then there's a God Rams within the Mount mirror or the top of the Mount mirror. And beyond that Mount mirrors, and then start the form Rams. Right? So there's one of the form Ram called free, conflict-free, means within the God realm there's the fighting, and demigods and daughters fighting. Right? So above that is free from this conflict. So, so this is kind of setting the example. This is this much kind of this fourth ground has cultivated the merit, right? If he wants to, if he sees the kind of need for born, right, and he will be king of this conflict-free. So it's simply kind of an example of how much he has cultivated the collection of the merit, right? It's not necessary he has to be born as a king, but this much he has the merit. So, and now this wisdom, the fourth ground, the radiant. So what is the really kind of skilled to is it's skilled in destroying the identity view and its derivatives. Means around the Tawa Tantra Yoga kind of grasping a self as a self-sufficient, right? This kind of particularly the grasping at self-sufficient existence has totally kind of destroyed with seed, and then derivatives means out of the driven by the grasping of self, and that which is kind of which drives to generating the anger and attachment through that the grasping is all has destroyed in this ground. Which means first ground, second ground, third ground hasn't been able to destroy the grasping of the self-sufficient existence of the seed of the grasping is self-sufficient, right? That does not mean they've been grasping at self-sufficient existence. So they have the seed. Seed hasn't removed yet. Now the fourth ground has removed or eliminate the seed of the grasping at self-sufficient I. So just go with that now. The 37 factors of enlightenment refer to the 7 sets, such as the 4 establishing of mindfulness. The 4 establishing of mindfulness are the establishing of mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of mind, mindfulness of mental object. So this Bodhisattva's, the fourth ground, has the unique wisdom to meditating on mindfulness of the body. So I mentioned that mindfulness of the body is the common practice, the Hinayana and Maya and the Bodhisattvas. But in Hinayana practice, the mindfulness of the body has to be your own body. So you're meditating, contemplating on impermanence of the body, conditional suffering of the body, and the empty of permanent I, and empty of self-sufficient I. So the Bodhisattvas meditating the impermanence of the body means as the alternate. So first you meditate on your own body as impermanent, conditioned suffering, empty of permanent I, self-sufficient, and then they go and other body, impermanent, conditioned suffering. So Bodhisattvas meditating the mindfulness of the body with your own body and other body, right? So now this kind of fourth ground is even there's a kind of one characteristics like impermanence. So they are always kind of uniquely they have making a distinctions, impermanence and conventional impermanence and ultimately, right? So they see clearly there is no such thing as impermanent ultimately, but dependently, yes, there is impermanent. So I think this is kind of for mindfulness and the 4 perfect endeavor are the generating the virtues factors that have not yet arisen and increasing those have already arisen
not generating non-virtuous factors that have not yet arisen, and perfectly relinquishing those that have already arisen. So, Yangda Pongwa Shi, this is like, because their wisdom, you can imagine this like, will, like maybe you have seen in India, there's some, particularly you see when you go to the Bodh Gaya in Varanasi, in the train station, they have a kind of there's what do you call them? Depictions. So there's a will, there's a very sharp spot, right? Many hundreds, eights, some has more than kind of, they come, what do you call it? Spokes
in the
yes,
wheel,
spokes.
right?
Yeah. So wisdom is just moving around, continuously moving, and that is the function. One of the characteristic is removing anything non-virtuous habit and imprints, and anything that is not yet developed is just developing and generating, and something that already generated that increases. Any negative has not yet generated, prevent, and anything that is already within them, they are overcoming. So this is the will kind of, many spokes that just move around and cutting, right? So the fourth ground, the wisdom, is the this is the kind of, the quality of the wisdom. So this is for perfect endeavors. And then after that, 4 limbs of the supernatural feats are those of the aspirations, diligence, mind, analysis in the form of concentration. Yeah. So these are all conventional. We just, the main thing is just one wisdom is doing everything, but you're trying to figure out, you want to giving a name. So what it has done and what it's doing, right? So then there's a supernatural feats. Means. So once the fourth ground has gained this kind of direct realization of emptiness, which is generating the aspirations, diligence, and mind. Mind means concentrations, analyzes the form of concentrations. Aspiration means, so because of this, maybe you can say, impact of this wisdom, and these anything that aspire, anything that they see, so possibilities, they could make things happen, right? So the aspirations. So these are all kind of the quality of the one thing, the wisdom. And then the aspirations and the diligence. Diligence means you have joy in there, right? Compounds. And then mind means, and then when sometime Bodhisattvas, they kind of, what do you call it? For particular purpose, they create a miracle kind of, form of anything, like a house, a shelter, and they create things. So that's one of the supernatural feats. So then they analyze the form of concentrations. And their wisdom is very sharp and very fast, right? Anything, if kind of disciple or the sentient beings who need answer, who need to solve things. So they can think in the instant, right? So they can find the answer. So that is the supernatural feats, which means it's just a name, supernatural feat. So in the story, in the fiction story, there's some have the supernatural feats, so they can just run, and then first they run on the ground, and then they fly, and they just go away. So it's kind of you're giving a name of the supernatural feat.
Mm-hmm.
So their aspirations, their mind, their analysis, all this has a very fast kind of result. So that's about the fourth ground. So then the five power of the faith, and so on. The seven limbs of the enlightenment are the limbs of enlightenment of perfect, again, mindfulness, clear discrimination of the characteristic phenomena, and diligence and appliances, and the concentrations, equanimities. Equanimities. This is the seventh Changju Yenla Dunes. So through this kind of the qualities, you can see the Bodhisattvas, the fourth ground, almost like a Buddha, enlightened beings. So through this quality, you can imagine them, their mindfulness, their clear discrimination awareness of the characteristic of phenomena, their diligence, their appliances, and the concentrations, and the equanimities. So as I mentioned earlier, the understanding of the dependent originations removes the fear and the fixations and generates the confidence to continue to go on your path. So you never step back, right? So, and then after that, the eighth Arya path consists of the Arya path of the right view, Arya path of the right intentions, view and intentions. Sometimes we call a right thought. So here, right intentions, and right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right diligence, and mindfulness, and the concentrations. Mm-hmm.
Is it so when we say Eightfold Path, is something different from Eightfold Arya Path?
It's the same. It's the same. This is the same. So Changzhou Sudyu means this 37th path is the common path, Hinayana and Mahayana, right? So Bodhisattva is non-Bodhisattva, is the common path. Now, why is mentioned in the fourth ground? So fourth ground has, special, unique wisdom to contemplate it on 37th path, right? So it's not like ordinary, general. Here, uncommonly practice. So it's a common practice, practiced uncommonly. So, yeah. Right. So 37 is a common practice. Mm-hmm. Now, fourth ground has the way of meditating on the 37th path uncommonly. So they understand impermanence in a two different way, ultimately and conventionally.
Can you talk about ultimate impermanence, please?
So impermanence means impermanence. The concept of impermanence stands with two things. One is continuities, and is the identity or entity that exists in and of itself.
So therefore you can say, yes, impermanence, for example, a minute, an hour, a day, a week, years. So these kind of, the entity is not exists in and of itself. It is conceptually projected, fabricated, measured, and given a name. So by that it exists. It's not like you are looking at the computers, and without looking at computers, computer is still there. So those time do not exist without thought, without a naming, right? Time exists with thought. Time exists with because the time is measured by the thought, right? When there is no measurement and there's no measured things, right? So that's the the impermanent and conventionally and ultimately, right? So ultimate means there's a different way to interpreting on the ultimate. One, you can say ultimate, the truth means ultimate truth means ultimate refer to the realization of the subject, which is understanding the profundity of the phenomena, right? Any kind of meaning that exists in the face of that, wisdom understands the profundity. So that is ultimate truth. Ultimate refer to the subject, which is objectively looking at the entity, right? So meaning that comes out from that objectively finding is ultimate truth. And another way of ultimate truth means things that exist. Things that exist. Things that exist, and then there is no meaning beyond that, right? So impermanent has the meaning beyond that. Impermanence means things are changing, things are continuing, right? So what can you understand beyond that? So beyond that means this continuing means there is, for example, you can say now today is disintegrating, right? Because without disintegration of the today, tomorrow won't come. So when the tomorrow is coming and looking at it as coming, and then you can see today is going, right? So the concept of today's going is due to reflecting on tomorrow is coming. If there's ultimate, then each hour has to go forward. Each hour never goes. It just disintegrates and ceases to exist. If something ceases to exist, what is going? Right? Everything that you see is just ceasing, disintegrating, right? So nothing goes. Now from that perspective, if you say there is nothing going from here, so nothing coming to here. So when you accept something is coming, you have to accept there is something going. So that the going and coming is mutually depending, mutually helping to be existing. So that is called conventional. That is called ordinarily perceived. Right? So ultimately, there is no such things coming and going. Right? So that's conventional and ultimate. Like short and tall, right? And then small and big, and then relations. These are just dependent. You're just comparing with something you find short, tall, big, thin. Right? So there is no ultimate tall. There is no ultimate short. Because the short and tall is not exist by in and of itself. It's just depending on something that you find is something is short and something tall. Right? So the perfection means higher path of right view. I think in the Varanas is when the Buddha first telling wheel of the Dharma about the Four Noble Truths. So he mentioned this right view, and some master says. So when he was explaining this Eightfold Path, right, Eightfold Arya Path. So at that time, the Buddha says, because he sees from his own life experience, and he go through the hardship practice, and he also find the comfortable and middle way of the path to finding the enlightenment. So he said the hardship, only through the hardship you cannot achieve anything. And too relaxed, too comfortable, also not the not the real real path. So you have to find the middle ways. So when he says this middle way, and then this term middle way comes. So at that time, the middle way is referring to the right view, right livelihood, right speech. So this kind of thing. Right. That the name of the middle way is starting from this. And then, so at that time, the middle way means the kind of not hardship, right? Not kind of, Geshe means, in Tibetan, Geshe means something that kind of, you pursued in something hardship practice that makes you so exhausted. Right? So that is the one of the extreme. And then Sonam Nyumbeta means now too comfortable and too pleasurable, right? So that is also one of the extreme that kind of, consumes a lot of your merit. So you have to go in the middle way. So that's Buddha. And then here, what are the middle ways? And then Buddha says, you have to practice the right view, the right thought, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right mindfulness, and concentrations. So that is what he has mentioned about the middle way. This is the middle way. Right? So at that time, there's a lot of practitioners, very, very persistent practicing hardship things, like not eating at all, and some of the some practice hardship practice, like this what do we call a sage, right? A saint. They go pilgrimage like a cow with four legs. So there's the thing of by making yourself very uncomfortable, punishing yourself, is purifying, and then you will go to heaven, right? And there's a Chandrakirti. Maybe not right now. You don't see much. In old time, there's some in the forest you can find men like kind of like Chandrakirti. There's like bird legs, birds. One, yes, standing on the one leg, one is there, and they just do like this for some says they can stand like this for a year. I don't know. Right?
Like the sadhus, is that?
Yeah.
Oh, like the
Yeah.
sadhus, okay.
So these are one of the extremes. But this is we have to abandon. So yeah, that's the so right view is the driving cause of this, and that drives the right thought, speech, action, livelihood, and concentrations, and mindfulness, diligence, and mindfulness and concentration. So without the right view, there is no right thought, there is no right speech, there is no right actions, there is no right livelihood, there is no diligence, there is no right mindfulness and concentrations. So right view means directly kind of, how say, kind of actualizing the empty of self-sufficient, empty of inherent existence, right? So that is the right view. So that opens all the right thought and speech continuously. Just come after another ones. Right? So, it looks like, all this talking about the qualities of the wisdom. So from the wisdom, there is a faith. From the wisdom, there is the compassion. From the wisdom, there's mindfulness, concentrations, actions, livelihood, everything. Right? So wisdom, which is, again, the empty of inherent existence. So now the first ground is the basis for training. As far as the actual training goes, the higher training and the morality correlate to the second ground. So as the first ground is for basis for training. Lobeten means this is the beginning of the noble wisdom, first ground. Right? And the second ground is noble beings perfecting the moralities. And the higher training in the mind and the concentration correlate to the third ground. And then why the higher training and wisdom correlate to the fourth and the fifth and the sixth grounds. So the process of perfecting the wisdom began from the fourth ground and the fifth and the sixth. The sixth has perfected the wisdom. After the sixth, then seven is perfected the wisdom. So therefore now the wisdom is much, much powerful. And not only, eliminating the afflictive emotions. And now it is began to kind of, being able to remove the stain of the afflictions. Then 8 and 9, 10 are the antidote to the applying for the stain of the afflictions, imprints, not the afflictions. Affliction has already removed, right, during the seventh. So that's the Buddha. Buddha means mind which is free from the stain of the afflictions. So Buddha is not a name, it's the quality. You want to give a name and then you say Buddha Shakyamuni, Buddha Tara, Buddha all the witches. So Buddha is the quality. Right? So here on this ground, the Bodhisattvas become especially endowed with the training, with wisdom that is highly versed in the coarse and subtle aspect of the 37 factors of enlightenment. So, coarse and subtle aspect, like impermanent in general, and ultimately there is no such thing as an entity of the impermanent, right? Ultimately. So then the showing what is the particularly relinquished thought associated with identity view totally cease. So here the thought associated identity view means around the Tawa Tante also says. So this foreground has overcome the seed of the grasping of self-sufficient I. Right? So here on this ground, the thought that are associated with identity view, namely settled identity view and thought that preceded, such as grasping at coarse level of I and mine in terms of holding on to self, to a sentient beings and so on as a substantial existence, as well as the grasping at self-existing of phenomena in terms of clinging to the aggregates, elements, sense bases, so on as the true existence. So these will totally cease. So right now we are totally bound with this, the grasping of self. Even now, we view the self-sufficient I in every part of your body, every feeling in the body, every kind of, every thought in it, every imagination, you are there, right? So the foreground has totally ceased this kind of misconceptions, right?
Is it correct to think that when the ego clinging in the I is the mere appearance of I is when there is no more self-grasping? Is that a way to view our way to interact with other samsaric beings? We're not there yet. That's the Buddha's version of the mere appearance of I.
Mere appearance. Yeah, I think that's kind of, the term that we often use, the mere appearance. Yes, of course, yeah. I think, yeah, but you can say it, but it's hard to go with that kind of, the concept. So because we are so used to find, right, whenever we name something, we label something, so we already have the idea that exists by in and of itself. So there's some people or someone kind of mind that is so used to it, for that kind of mind to convincing is not that easy, right? So, but you say, oh yes, the entity is not exist at all, right? So everything is mere appearance. But you say, if you say, oh, your nose is not really correct, so what do you mean? so it's kind of, there's a kind of, always guarding and defending that, because you view the most precious of I is in the every part of your body. So you almost worship that I, right? You wanted I that is perfect and kind of free from every defect. So that much you have cherished. That exists on your nose. If someone says your nose is not right, so which means if someone hits the neighbor's dog, neighbor will get angry, right? It's because it's my dog. So even in the small flowers, you just cut petals. So when they see, oh, this is my flower, right? So you exist, that you see that this self-sufficient I and everything. Right? But I don't know this. One of the Lama Selingpa, Lama Atisha's guru, Selingpa from Indonesia. So, and in his writing, he says, this self-grasping is the pillar of the Buddha. So, so it's a pillar. Means if the pillar is not there, the whole house collapses, right? So he explained that the grasping itself is the pillar of enlightenment. So now for him, or I don't know why he said that. So it kind of like, there's some way of, the independent self. If I impose my body, I cherish that. So if I can everywhere, if I impose that, so I like to, I'm compelled to protect and cherish that. So Bodhisattvas, maybe some Bodhisattvas thinks that. So in that way, I can train myself to impose myself or I on everybody. So in that way, my mind also follows that thought, and then I cherish and respect everybody. So I think maybe that's the kind of, maybe there's the way of people find there is generating a great compassion, sense of caring for others. So when you go with Chandrakirti's commentary and Buddha Palita's enlightenment is not through the misconception. Right. So Chandrakirti and Buddha Palita says everything is like the entity that you see, like the reflections. So reflections is undeniably it exists, but there is no locations. It's not locatable. There's no there's no substantial in there. So this is what we need to know. Everything is like a mirage and reflections, like a time, like the relations, like yourself, others, like good or bad. Everything is just reflections. Right? There is no solid things that exist in and of itself as bad and good. Right? So yeah, the substantial existence as well as the grasping of self-existing phenomena in terms of clinging to the aggregates, the elements and sense bases, and so on as a truly existence. So I think on this part, Buddha Shakyamuni, I think I mentioned that before, right? Buddha Shakyamuni teaches the meditating on the, four elements of the six elements. So he teaches to the Rahul, his son, because one day they're all going out mourning for Am, and Rahul's the youngest. He at last, and he was fantasizing in his mind while he's going with the monks. So what if my father is Chakra king, means king of all kings, and what should I be? How I be? So he was fantasizing himself. He was just physically he's in the line, but in his mind it was just. Yeah. And Buddha suddenly stopped and looked back and told the Rahu, "Don't distract your mind." And so just in the publicly it's not really scold, but for him it's very shameful. So he just ran away. So he didn't go for Am. So he ran away and he was sitting under the trees and just very sad. I was very ashamed today. So Buddha told me in front of all this monk. So he was kind of a little upset. then when they come back from the morning breakfast, so the Shariputra and then another, their monk, they bring the food for the Rahu, and they kind of help him to not to get upset. And then after maybe an hour and 2 hours, and Buddha told him, kind of asked him to come. And at that time, Buddha says this kind of teaching. So Buddha says, you see, there's the air. Do they care for the bad smell or good smell? So he said, no. So why do the air that you breathe in and air breathe in and out, inhale, exhale, right? Has what you think there's some kind of the substantial I in there. Why do you care so much on the air that you breathe in and out? And then do fire care for the things that burn in, right? You just put the trash or you just burn leaves. So fire burns everything without discriminating, right? So likewise, heat in your body has no substantial soul, no substantial I in there to be cherished like me or mine. So, and similarly, the water, the moisture in the body, the space in the body, and the consciousness that they experience through the sense power. So everything is empty of self-sufficient I. So this teachings, when Buddha was kind of, giving an instruction to the Rahu, at that time the Shariputra is there. So Shariputra listened to all the teachings. So one day he used this publicly and very kind of eloquently, and that really pleases the Buddha. Right? So it's kind of, so we see the self-sufficient I, the substantial I, and every air they breathe in and out. We seize the kind of, self-sufficient I, every heat, moistures, space, and sense power, and consciousness experience. We always view the self-sufficient I. So, and something that related to my body, right? So my sister, brother, right? And my house, my dog. So because there is something, you just make a connection to that. So you see your self-sufficient I also expendable, but it's not limitlessly expanding, but it's expendable for, for certain limit. So, and then because of that, and you're making it kind of, you see how big gap in yourself and other. Because yourself has kind of, it exists in and of itself with surrounding factors. So there's already, you see the boundary between you and I. Right? If you see the air you breathe out, I also breathe in. I breathe out, you breathe in. So if you contemplate it, right, the space that you use, I use. The ground that you go, I go. Right? But if there is nothing, then me and mine, and the air, and the heat, and the ground, right, the soil, and the space. So what is that kind of, you kind of, you see the self that landed and located in a particular kind of substantial basis. If self is kind of locatable and substantial, and it has to be stand on the air and the moisture and the heat. Right? If there is no, this is what makes the I to be existing, I to be moved. Right? not your table, not your cushion, not your shoes, the air, the space. There is no me locating, right? There is no me you can find, me and mind. So if we make distinctions, when I breathe in, don't breathe my air. Okay? This is my. So each person has to bring in oxygen. So you see, this is the conceptually you impose so much things, and you want to make it make the border. Because all these things that you are creating the life of yourself is projection of your mind. So when you understand that, and then that kind of release the fixation on the phenomena. So truly existence, they will totally sees the meaning of the word cessation here. Here is that the Bodhisattvas eliminate those seed of the twofold self-grasping that are the specific object of the abandonment to be relinquished by this ground. It is not the case that the entirety of self-grasping is annihilated. So fourth ground is not annihilating every grasping of self. Here's particularly the grasping of self-sufficient I, right, has eliminated with seed, and grasping of self inherent existence, the part of that, yeah, some portion of grasping of self inherent existence, right? So this is like a way removing the purifying the negative defilement is like washing clothes. First, the gross dirts that just come out, and then again you just rub. You rub again, and then there's another level of the dirts coming, and again you just do it many times, more settles. So in this way, the purifications through the wisdom is like that. First, the grosser level afflictive emotions, and then more little bit subtle and more subtleties. So yeah.
The twofold self-grasping is the self-sufficient inherence.
Yeah, one is the grasping the self-sufficient I with seed is totally ceased, and the second and the portion of the grasping itself inherent existence, not all of them, right? One part, yeah. It's like washing machine, you wash, right? First, the water goes out with very colorful. The second is less color and less color, so it's like that. Yeah. This concludes the expositions of the fourth ground of the ultimate awakening mind from illuminating the intent, an exposition of entering in the middle way. Yeah, the fourth ground is
The shortest chapter so far.
There's a 2-page, the fourth ground. Any
questions now?
So this is this equated to joyous effort? This ground, or
Yeah, it's joyous effort.
Yes, okay.
But it's the term that we use here,
okay,
diligence.
diligence?
Yeah. Joyous effort is in Tibetan terms, 尊重. And then sometimes we say, 尊重geladros. And what is the 尊重 means? Something that you joy in virtuous activities is the diligence.
Because sometimes that wording makes it sound like, even if it's kind of like looking towards it and understanding, I'm not there yet, so I will keep working towards it, even if maybe you know you don't have the same sense of like joyousness, but you put in the effort. That's what my initial understanding of diligence was, because you think I will be diligent until I reach that point.
I think there's many kind of diligence through knowledge of your future achievement. For example, if someone wants to do the business, so they try to find the amount of money to invest on that product and selling it, and they kind of make the speculations, right, in the mind, the mathematical thinking. This is how I do. But still in your part of your mind has insecure, suspicious, and kind of, not sure, right? The many part of your mind is say, I'm not sure, I'm not ready. But part of your mind says, yes, I have to do it, right? So here the diligence, perfecting the diligence means there is no hesitations, there is no suspicion, there's no doubt in your path. You are complete and totally understood that everything is coming the way it's coming. Right? So when you go, to India, then you plan. If I go there, so, and if I go there, if I stay 1 day or 2 days, so can I, and then you try to think, is there a possible of me finding good place, me finding good friends, me finding good foods, right? So there's a kind of, there's some kind of not 100% sure, right? So there's still worries in your mind. So perfecting the diligence means no hesitation, no doubt, and everything you completely, clearly sees in your mind. So that's perfecting the generosity. So it's perfect aspirations, perfect the mindfulness, perfect the, concentrations. So there is no any defect in any part of your path. Yeah. So the diligence and the perfection of the diligence is the two different things. Right. In English, is there any difference? The kind of, effort and the diligence.
I think they have different kind of, like you put effort into something, meaning like you're gonna try, but that doesn't mean that you are enjoying it. Like I'll put effort into mowing the lawn, but that doesn't mean I want to mow the lawn.
So the effort creates image of hardship. So I think that's why you say, when you say I put effort means
Yeah.
this will be difficult for me.
Yeah, or you're going to try and do something with like all that you can. Like that's what, yeah. But diligence seems like it's like you'll stay at it and continue at
You
it.
have all the knowledge, right?
I'm not even sure if it would be all the knowledge. When I think of diligence, I think of it as like you're just chipping away a rock. You just keep going, and then eventually it breaks in half.
So you see, how many times, every part of the Buddha's teachings, because the Buddha's teachings is not from kind of, independent from the Buddha's mind. Buddha's teachings from the audience, their desire, their capacities, right? So Nagarjuna and Buddha Pali, the text from the beginning, there's a question and answers. A question says, so why do you need to explain dependent originations, which is already clearly explained in the sutra? Why you have to do it again? So the Nagarjuna says, so for example, the Nagarjuna says, everybody follows the Buddha's teaching and try to understand. So they are just kind of beginning their step. So when they are beginning the step, then someone need to explain it, right? So they are going towards that. So they are not 100% sure, 100% convinced. They still have the faith to continue to go on the path. So people ask, people read, people contemplate, which means, right, they need explanations. They need kind of descriptions. So that's the Nagarjuna says. So this is why when the Buddha also clearly explained the dependent originations, at the same time, when the Buddha kind of talk about impermanence and conditional suffering, and people also misinterpret, right? Buddha says things, every conditional phenomenon impermanent and conditional suffering. So people interpret that there is the time that exists, right? Objectively, that exists independently. That time is the one that bringing the changes in every conditional phenomena. So that is, this is not what Buddha meant or impermanent, but you understood in this way. You have understood the impermanent is the time. Time is independent from form and consciousness, right? So it's like time is by itself is a person, and he will decide, right? You will have a good day or a bad day. So, then you probably have to please the time. So if you understood in this way, yes, you need explanation of this teaching. So yeah, that's everything that we like when even the house there, same family, same house, living every day together, still need explanations, right? So because you have a different mind, you have a different habit, you have a different perspective, right? And then you have to explain. Still, that person misunderstood or misinterpret that. So that's kind of that's the house there. What do you call? Yeah, society women's short-sighted people's way of kind of engaging on the understanding of the phenomena, meaning, any kind of meaning. Sometimes there are nicknames they're given from the text sutra. This is short-sighted, childish. So, ordinary is okay. But why you call me short-sighted? Sometimes it seems like people, human beings become more short-sighted because everything, decisions made with their eyeball, right? Not from the mind. So with eyeball, you're just making things, and every kind of what has the seen with eye is nose has no idea. So no ear, no tongue, but eye is making decision for every sense part. Sometimes it's because of the sushi, right? So making it look good, but taste not good. So because it look good, it has to be expensive. So, and sometimes it also says the avocado is also one of that. No taste. So I is more powerful. Yeah.
Lisa and Julie, say welcome back.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Sheila, could you lead us to one of the mindfulness analysis, mindfulness of body or feeling or mind?
So as I mentioned earlier, the Buddha Shakyamuni taught to his son, the Rabu, about the 5 elements. So just contemplate the air, every air that you breathe in and out, how it comes, right? Inhale, and what you inhale, and it goes out, exhale. So there is no me and mine. So as a result of continuously inhale and exhale, and produces the heat in the body. There's every part of the body that heats has no me and no mind, right? And then because of the heat that captures the moisture in the body, so that moisture has no sense of I and mind. And the space, the hole in the body, that again, this is the devoid of self and mind. And every consciousness, the eye consciousness that goes with eye sense power, the nose consciousness goes with nose sense power, tongue sense powers. So this is just from the contact and generate the consciousness and experience, right? So this consciousness, the experiencing, the smell, taste, the tactility is not independent, is dependent through the contact, right? Outer element, inner element, the contact of the outer element in the inner element, and the consciousness that develop. The consciousness not by itself is engaging or perceiving anything. Right? So there is no substantial, the I that could remain kind of, independent, solid, permanent. So this how you just contemplate on that. And then see, there is nothing to be called in me and mine, but because of that, the me and mine exist. Like when there's the water, right? Because of the water and the moon, the reflection that exists. Right? So you cannot say where it coming from, where it goes, where it stays. It's not locatable, it's not coming from anywhere, not going to anywhere. Right? But
undeniably it exists. So, kind of, they consist of these 6 elements, and there is something for the mind to be labeled a me, a man, a woman. So this me and man and woman and monk and manager or whatever you just name it, carpenter or the potter or smith or whatever you say, this just comes through the thought, conceptually, right? Constructing it, right? Fabricating it, and it continuously exists. Undeniably, those entities exist, right? Those entities exist, not exist in and of itself. It's just dependent. You have already constructed something that allows you to create or characterize something else. So other than there is no such thing that is independent. So I think here the suffering and the cause of the suffering, I think from this teaching, it kind of, implying that suffering and the cause of the suffering, the main kind of, the core of the suffering is fixation. Right? Fixations is supported or backed up by misconceptions. Right? Feeding up the solid target. So misconception create the solid target, feed up to the anger and attachment and jealousy. So they think there's something need to be remain, to be strong. So when you negate or refuting this, nothing independently exists, nothing in and of itself. So that kind of emptied. By emptying it, it freed the mind from the fear, and not just fear from not free from the fear. It also helps you to not fixate on anything. So not fixating and it kind of freeing the mind will be much happier and peaceful, and to do something and the more kind of effort, with more effortful, right? So I think that's the kind of point, the kind of importance of the understanding of the dependent originations. So in Sanskrit, Pratita Samutpad. So Pratita Samutpad, so which means, for example, so when you have a mirror, right? So you see, and there are some places on the curve, there's a big mirror, right? So when someone who's driving from coming, and they look at the mirror, there's cars coming, they see it. So because the mirror, you see the reflections. So without that, there is no reflection exist. So Pratita Samutpad means you have already constructed something. So for example, you have constructed the act of seeing. Therefore, I as a seer is automatically exists in your mind. So what makes this I as a seer to be exist is because you have construct or imposes the act of seeing. And if now the kind of the unique thing is the act of seeing itself. When you analyze what is that thing that is seeing the color. So act of seeing, is it in the color? No. If the color has act of seeing, color has to see itself. If the act of seeing that really exists, right? Really exists in here in the I sense power. So then the I sense power has to see things by itself. So then you will see twice, with I, with the mind. And again, third is with me. Right? If the I sense power is seeing things by itself, the I sense power functions like a mirror in receiving the reflections. So just by receiving the reflections, has the quality of seeing things. Why not the mirror can see things? If the mirror is seeing, better not to put the mirror in the bathroom. So mirror is seeing, water is seeing the moon, right? So if the mirror has no quality of seeing things, why the I sense power could see things by itself? So the activity of seeing is not inherent in the sense power, inherent in the consciousness, not inherent in the color. But altogether, there's a something. You have the basis to impose act of seeing. By constructing the act of seeing, so you automatically comes in your mind, I am the seer. Right. So you see, Pratita Samutabhats, you have already created something that allows you to create another things. So, yeah.
So the for mindfulness, you could meditate individually on feelings, mind, and mental object, but you actually could just, could be one meditation.
Yeah, just verbally we can say the four. Mindfulness, the body, mindfulness, the feeling, mindfulness, the consciousness, and the object, right? So, but when you actually in meditations, you can include all of them. Right? So, verbally, we say 5 elements, almost like the finger, the separate, but element, they do not exist like a finger. There is no air independent from the heat. There is no water independent from the heat. There is no earth element, the solidity, independent from the water. They don't really exist, right? Because they could not survive without having contact with other elements. But in the language and the verbally we say, right, 5 elements. 5 orange, 5 elements. Almost there's no difference to you. 5 orange, you can say 1, 2, 3. Or you can say, oh, space, air, heat. You count on the finger, therefore you think it is like exists like finger.
So the 5 elements are also impermanent?
Yeah.
Excellent. Everything arises from the Dharmakaya and the substrate. Is that a true statement?
Everything arises Dharmakaya.
And the individual substrate?
Dharmakaya, I think Dharmakaya is kind of, the enlightened quality. So things do not arise from the enlightened quality. So things exist by depending on the cosmic condition. So depending on the cosmic conditions, if the cosmic conditions is the perfect wisdom and compassion, and that can generate or give rise to the Dharmakaya, that can give rise to the cessation of afflictions, that can give rise to Buddha and Arhat. Right. So if the cosmic condition, the ignorance and the karma, and then there is no Dharmakaya, right? There is no Dharmakaya from it. When there is the rice seed, there is no corn from it. When there's a tomato, there is no banana from it. So in order to be a Buddha, you have to change the cosmic conditions. So that's what we're doing. We're removing the cosmic condition that makes me childish, that makes me short-sighted, and we developing or cultivating the cosmic condition to be arhat, to be noble being, to be Buddha.
Would it be correct to say I was meditating on impermanence of feelings or even anger, and was able to grab a hold of that in everyday life? I'm able to grab a hold of that anger very quickly because of my meditations on impermanence, on anger. And when I see that anger arise in my mind, I can grasp a hold of it and change it to a virtuous thought. You know, say I'm angry at somebody that's not even close to me in a situation that happened before. But instead of being angry at that person and having negative thoughts, creating more negative karma for myself, because I'm able to grasp onto it sooner and quickly, I can change the anger into virtue and maybe have compassion on that situation, on that person, and maybe try to practice bodhicitta or tonglen on the mischief makers, the evildoers that I encounter. Would that be a correct way of doing impermanence, purifying the mind, and creating virtue over myself and others, I imagine? Is that a good way to see things?
Yeah, it's a good way of saying that. This is like, for example, some people sitting in the kitchen table and talk about the, share markets. Get this much money, and then put this, and I can make this much money. Then I put it there, and then I this make. Oh, I'm quite rich now, but I couldn't find my milk.
Oh my God.
So this is the kind of you can imagine, you can see this are possible, but here we're talking about the what causes the conditions produces what result, right? So in that case, now saying that out of karma and afflictions, and that always result in conditioned suffering. So free from the ignorance and karma is the liberations. So I think we are intellectually understanding the kind of the process of the cosmic condition first, and then once we convinced with that, and then because the mind is convinced, understood, then when we apply, when we practice an action path, so there is less doubt and less kind of hesitations, right? So I think we have to make something within the ground. So from this I start, right? So I should not have the hesitation. I should not have doubt. So in order for removing the hesitation and the doubt and suspicions, you have to collect the knowledge first, right? Yeah, kind of like that. So I think for the beginner, so you start with impermanence, right? Impermanence means instant changing, right? Everything is changing, and the change is how the change is processing. What drives that changes? So the change drives by the potential cause, right? So potential cause means if the potential cause is negative, the change always produce suffering. And the change that comes from the positive cause, and then every change is peaceful and pleasurable, right? So change and the potential, and then you have to know another thing is, I would say, this change is never come at will, right? It's not coming out of whim, because the changes always happening changes follows the potential. So it's not created by the God. It's not created by making it happen by your desire. It follows its own cause and condition. Everything. Right? So if things are changing and following its own cause and condition, its own potential, then you have to go after the potential. Right? So by following the kind of, potential, then you will see the result. Right? So if you're just going after the result, then maybe there are many, sometimes we get food poison by looking at food. Oh, the delicious, looks eatable, right? So just eat it. So you have to know how long this has been. Right? So this is like that. Impermanence and follow the potential and never happen at will. Yeah, for the next Sunday is fifth ground. Hard to conquer.
It's just one verse, right?
Yeah.
It's just one verse.
I think more than one verse. Yeah, thank you. Chanju Semjo Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Geshe, Kevanya, Mebo, Kone, Kondo, Fevu, Tonye Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Geshe, Kevanya, Mebo, Kone, Kondo, Fevu, Koma Simjen Tamje, Dedan Deji, Ngendro Tamje Tato, Tong, Chanju Semba, Tana Sushu, Terra Kunju, Molom Jojo Ruji, Tarera, Rugo Vishi, Pendan Dewa, Manu, Jume, Jeres, Tenzin Jazu, Shabesite Badu, Danger.
May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings have all the happiness, and may all the lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their courage accomplish immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. O powerful, generous, and remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Was it Wayne?
Yes, it's Marion,
Yeah.
correct?
So how did you hear about that?
Online, online. Sounds like you speak to him maybe 2 months back.
Oh, you did?
Say, hey, I saw you guys online, you're starting a new course, so I will join you. Be in person again, I never really cared for the online stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully we stay. I know that the rate's going back up. Hopefully, for COVID.
Oh, you're guys, might have been when you were vaccinated. You didn't show up 3 times.
Yeah, I think we're
Yeah.
vaccinated here.
Yeah, it's just smart.
So are you local or?
Ontario.
Oh, you're close.
5-6 months.
Yeah, we have a few people that are like out in La Cañada, Pasadena, join Lama.
No.
The drive is horrible. Yeah.
I started a new job for the summer, and you work with